Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end-of-life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. Today's conversation is close to my heart because I work with many families where loved ones have stepped into the role of being primary caregivers. This episode is about the journey of caring for a parent as they decline. My guest, Tracey Scheffler, stepped into the role of full-time caregiver for her mother who had dementia. I first met Tracey through her TikTok page, Parenting Our Parents, where she talks about the daily realities of caregiving, the exhaustion, grief, and joy that shows up. And this isn't just Tracey's story. As of 2020, approximately 53 million Americans were providing unpaid care to an adult with health or functional needs. Many of these caregivers, like Tracey, are navigating this path without formal training, often balancing other responsibilities. Whether you're currently in the caregiver role, have been in the past, or are preparing for that possibility, I hope this conversation offers you the information that you need, validation, and a sense of connection. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Tracey, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Traci. I'm ready to talk about mom.
Now, before we talk about your mom's dementia journey, can you tell us a little about who your mom was before she was diagnosed?
Yeah, that was one of the first things I figured you'd ask. And I was thinking about her journey as a mom and who she was really young. And she was I would say, typical typical housewife in my very young days. She went back to school about when I was 7 or 8, and it was, I believe, changed my life just watching my mother go back and finish her nursing degree, and then she started working. And I, really thought about kind of who she was as far as and we talk about this all the time, what things would define you as as a person, mom, and we think of the words smart, determined, stubborn. And I would say she's pretty grounded in her beliefs and how she was a person. But I really think about everything she did as a mom and the creativity she did. And, this was the 70s. She was making jam and making fondues and cooking beef Wellington. I mean, stuff that I'm like, who makes those kind of things anymore? She sewed every Halloween costume for me and my sister, and then my kids. And that I'll share part of that later. But that's just a little bit about who she was.
How wonderful. She sounded like an amazing mother.
Different, it's as a mom of 4, I reflect a lot about the parental journey when you have kids and you start realizing that your parents, the old, you didn't come with a manual, and then each kid doesn't come with a manual. And as cliche as it is, it's every parent will understand what I'm saying, because you're like, well, that one I couldn't say that to, and that one doesn't do that, and that one. And I thought, you think about all the things your parents didn't do, but then you start as a mom going, oh my gosh, she took me to the dentist every 6 months on the dot. She got my hair cut every 8 weeks. She did those things. I say I for my sister and I, and she made sure we knew how to swim, and those kind of things that she did. Just, I said, Mom, your legacy it's not about money. It's so much more than that. It's not that she had a lot, but people think of legacy as money. And I don't think of legacy as money. I think of legacy of these things that she did as a mom that she passed on to me that are going to my kids and will keep going.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you with legacy. And it's funny because I've been doing this end of life educator and doula for 2 years now. And as a person, I've changed a lot, I think, and what I view as important is very, very different, especially being in the Silicon Valley where money is the commodity, right? It's so freeing when you start evaluating your life in terms of what you want to see at the end and who you want to be around, and those values are so completely different.
If you were sitting with me, you would see the goosebumps because I think we started our journey about the same time, about 2.5 years ago, maybe a little long. So we were kind of
Yep.
following concurrently, I should say, journeys. And
Yeah.
it changes who you are as a person for the better.
I know that when we started talking about meeting, you were still going through the journey of taking care of your mom, and I know she passed away. When did she pass away? What was that date?
It's April 21st. And the only reason I know that is I had to look it up yesterday because I was like, well, I know it was a Monday. I know what time it was. But besides, when you're a caregiver, it's just not the physical and the person. There's paperwork, there's planning, and there is it could be a whole 4-hour podcast just on the paperwork and
Yes.
planning. But it was April 21st.
I'm very sorry that for your loss.
Thank you.
Going back in time, when did you first start noticing those changes in your mother, and what did those early signs look like?
So my mom called me probably 11, 12 years ago, and she was working at a hospital, a doctor's office, and they lived in Nashville, Tennessee. And she called and she said, "Tracy, they're going to fire me. They tell me that I keep repeating myself and that I'm forgetting things." And I knew this was kind of coming, but I also been in corporate America enough. I was like, you walk right back in there, mom, and you tell them that you have a medical issue, because I knew that would cease the termination and it would protect her benefits. And she did. I said, here, I'm going to type you an email right now. I'm going to tell you what to send to HR, send this to HR, and then go in and make sure they got it. And I remember that moment. And because that was her last day as a nurse, because she went home that day and she had to retire. And
How did you know to do that? Do you have any HR experience before, or?
so I've spent 25 plus years in the customer service industry running global contact centers, which are hundreds to thousands of people. And in that scenario, you deal with a lot of hiring practices, a lot of termination, performance. There's FMLA, intermittent. I mean, there's a zillion different kind of policies and procedures that you have when you're dealing with exempt and non-exempt workers. And because we had in that industry, you have so many people that you want to make sure they're on the right path to performance, or that if they're not, that, and you're going to have to terminate them, you have to make sure all the paperwork is documented. Not every state, is has different rules, I would say. So that's a huge influence for me to know exactly what to do. So that just my business side of me knew exactly what to do. I wouldn't say my experience at that point with dementia told me. I moved really quickly into business mode when she said that, because financially I knew what was about to happen. She could get fired, and then long-term disability would cut out. All those things would happen. So that's just my business background kicked in.
How old was your mom around when she started to go through this?
So that's we think 64.
Young.
Yeah. And longer story of early onset. And I wouldn't say she's early onset, knowing what I know now, because early onset can start at 39, 40. But she's still young. It's not like when someone tells you, yeah, my mom's 85 and she has dementia, and no shit. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, really? So I will too at 85. And sorry for the swearing, but it's aging is one thing, but dementia has some very specific things. And, there's all the subcategories, and she probably did have Alzheimer's. I'll have to say medically to my cousin, who would say, "Now, Tracy, you can't 100% prove that because she didn't have a spinal tap. So
Mm,
more than likely she had Alzheimer's." But she was probably 64,
mm,
is when we think the first indications came.
mm. I know you had a full-time job. As the dementia progressed, how did your role shift? Like, what did that day, I mean, you're part of the sandwich generation where you
I
have
am the sandwich.
you're the sandwich. You have you're taking care of your mom, and now I know that you're helping with your mother-in-law, but then you have your children also. And so what did your day-to-day look like?
So it was never there was never a plan. And I have an episode I talk about that. But when dad died in 2023,
Mm,
I'll never, mom looked at me and said, "I guess I'll come live with you." And, my husband was like, "So we'll take care of you, of course." And we packed her up and she moved to Texas. And at that time, I have a 15-year-old daughter. She was 13 at the time. So we packed mom up. Um, I wasn't prepared because I'd been flying back and forth to Nashville to take care of my dad, because together they were a whole person. He
yep.
was physically unable and she was mentally unable, and and it's not a unique story. I know there are many couples that take each part of their best, what they have left, I guess, or where they are in life. I'll say that better. Not what they have left. That's really bad, Tracy. And they become a whole person. And COVID didn't do them any favors because it made things accessible to them, like food delivery, and doctor's appointments got canceled, and they lived in their house. I don't even know if they ever went out for months. And so that's a little bit of background. But when she moved here, I wasn't prepared at all because I didn't have a room ready. I didn't have anything. And I remember I called these these people I use for organizing, and I'm like, "Listen, I need you to pack up." And then, to my second daughter, bless, just feel for her, because we packed her she hadn't lived here in a couple of years, but we packed her room up to get ready for my mom. Um, and they did that, and they took, I said, "You got to take everything out of there. It's got to have clean surfaces, nothing in the way." And so they packed her all up before we got there. And then we got here, and it was February 2nd, 2023. The heat's out. It's freezing in Texas. We just had an ice storm. So mom and I are huddling in front of the fireplace, and I just hauled her suitcases up the stairs, because mom could still walk up, and then physically she was amazing. But we moved her in, and then I thought I could work and take care of her. And so I've worked at my house since 2008. So unfortunately, I started my own company 5 years ago. So I've an immense amount of flexibility. But I thought I could do both. So, I'd wake up. She never would get up till philosophy is, I'm not going to wait. You wake mom up. That's your good luck. Like, we'll see you maybe in the, whatever. But she'd wake up about 11. So I'd plan my meetings in the morning, get my daughter out of, off to school. Then I'd go wake her up. And there's no rushing someone with dementia. Like, I'm not equating it to a toddler, but when you were a mom of a toddler and you thought you could run out the door in 10 minutes, like, forget it. Like, get ready, because you're in it for the duration. So I'd get her dressed. argue about the shower. That I finally figured that out. And then I had her breakfast made before I go upstairs, put her pills out, go upstairs. And then maybe by 12:30, 1 o'clock, everything was situated. And she loved to play on her, it was an iPod, but we called it a Kindle. Why it was called the Kindle, I have no idea because she didn't read on it, but she played Words with Friends. Um, and she'd sit there, and then I'd sit here and work, and I could see her, and I'd come out and visit. And that's how it started. So that's what it started to look like, Tracy, in February of 2023.
And soon it became a full-time reality. I mean, someone with dementia. And your mom, I have to hand it to you because I know so many people whose loved ones, for many reasons, they can't live at home and they have to go into memory care. For many reasons. I mean, people could become violent. People could, it's less than ideal, right? So your mom stayed with you. Did she stay with you until the end? And that reality of did you have to, because at some point, if your mom's living at home, you become a full-time caregiver.
Yeah.
And then your work, what do you do with your work?
So no, she was not with me till the end. But at that point, we didn't have a plan at all. And, unable to grieve about my dad. Mom is, I'll just take a quick little story. When dad died that night, all I could think of was, oh my God, the woman's going to wake up and not remember her husband died. And I slept next to her the whole night, and she did ask me. And that was heartbreaking to tell her. Sorry, Tracy.
That's okay. You take your time.
And I just didn't want her to be alone. And everybody gives you advice about dementia, like don't move them, don't do this, don't. I'm like, gosh, I thought marriage and kids got a lot of advice. Boy, did I get a lot of advice, and some of it was okay, some of it was always back to trust my gut and do what's best for our family. But yeah, it was 24/7 because I'd work as hard as I could. I felt bad. She'd sit out there playing her games, but as I got to know more about dementia, dementia people seem to like routine. They seem to like doing the same things. They won't initiate different, like she's not going to be like, okay, I got all day. What can I do? They're not initiators like that, and she'd ask me when are you going to be done working? And then I'd finish working at about 5:36. And then I'd have to make dinner for her every single night. Well, at this point in my life, my 3 kids had left, going to college or working. It was me, my husband, and my daughter. And we sometimes did, fend for yourself night. I didn't cook every night. Now I'm cooking every single night and sitting with her every night. And then we'd watch the first 30 days, we watched a movie every single night. And it got to a point I was like, I can't find a good movie I was like, Mom, and then I was like, I can't watch another movie. I mean, I was watching everything. And at some point, Mom would sometimes say, well, this doesn't really interest me. My mother was very direct. And if she didn't want to do something, she wouldn't. She'd start going upstairs. Well, Mom really didn't know how to put her pajamas on. She would put them on backwards. Sometimes she would forget she had put them on, so that we had her whole routine at night where I was like, okay, Mom, you ready for bed? And at this point, she was carrying her purse around everywhere. And the purse weighed like 10 pounds. I was like, and I tried to get her to leave it, but no, we just carried the purse everywhere, carry your purse upstairs, put it on the bed, and I'd help her take her clothes off. And we always set the pajamas out in the morning when I woke her up, because I realized routine really helps her. But then I take her, put her to bed, tuck her in, And then I'd write her a note because a lot of times she wouldn't remember or she'd be stubborn about the shower. So when I have all these notes that I would write her, like, if she was going to bingo with my mother-in-law the next day, I was like, clean people win. Don't forget it's shower day. Love #1, Tracy. And I'd put it where she could see it every night. Then I'd wake her up and she'd read it before bed. And then I'd set her, and I'm not going to say it, Alexa, because if I do, my house will go off. But I'd set her device to 11 a.m. Roy Orbison Pretty Woman. And she's like, what if I don't want to get up? And I was like, well, then just tell it to stop. But she'd get, when she woke up, sometimes she'd get up, sometimes she would not. And yeah, it was full time. And there were so many phases to it, Tracy. So I know the story's taking a little long.
It's okay.
But I realized that I couldn't get my work done and to take care of mom. So I started hiring home health workers. Wow. What a journey that is. Some of them were great, some of them weren't, but I started calling in help basically for part of the day. And I did that for another, yes, she stayed with me 15 months. And then I found a memory care and then she went to memory care. And she was in memory care from March to April 21st. So 13 months.
When a person is looking for someone who you would trust, what should they look for? What was good?
Initiative, people that show initiative. Like if I found that if everything had to be told, then I was still doing the job. So that was always problematic. Experience with older people, and I would say sometimes formal training was great. In hindsight, some of the greatest people were at the memory care were probably early 20s that just had a passion for their grandparents. They related much better to my mother than even some of some of the nurses that were professionally trained. Of course, and later I found out the training for dementia was maybe 2 or 3 hours. There was not like how to give a shower, how to do this, how to do that. So I would say, well, and that they just like being with old people, older, I don't know if that's the right term anymore, but and then I guess the other thing is know when you need them because your brain's so scattered. You're like, I don't know what hours I need them. And then you'll find, well, people don't want to work the weekends. And you're like, I need Sunday off. Well, good luck. Nobody wanted to work Sunday. And mom would go to bed at 7 or 8 and I didn't always need the overnight. So it was hard to find people that would stay even later. So I would tell people, know what hours you want and be very clear. And then interview people before they come to your house. So, if you like them. So all that learning is going to be great for my mother-in-law. She's a widow. And although her sister's helping her now, her sister can't do it forever. And I said, we need to interview people to help and make sure the personality matches. So that's just the initiative. I would say that they enjoy it. And they experience does help, but I would say more that they just enjoy it. And even if that experience, they tell you, oh my gosh, I play with my granddad every day, cribbage, for the last 5 years. I'd take that any day over an RN and my mother was a nurse, so know that I love that. But I would take someone saying that I love hanging out with my grandpa every day for the last 5 years. I would hire that person immediately.
It's so difficult being a caregiver. What helped to ground you? It doesn't sound like you had any time to take care of yourself.
Before I started taking care of my mom, my parents, debate and arguing was part of our growing up. We just liked to debate things, and there was no Google. Eventually you would go to the encyclopedia. But as you got older, it became a little bit of the struggle. because arguing about everything. Well, at some point, taking care of my dad, I just flipped my switch where I became more relaxed and not so poke the bear. Like
Mm.
I just had it, that's, just flipped in my head, and I was able to just absorb things and not take them personally. And it still, some of the things she said still hurt, but that helped, just grounding in the fact that you can control them not being so agitated yourself by how you say things and arguing with them, and stop arguing, maybe confirm, agree, different kind of responses verbally. um, I did a horrible job of taking care of myself, horrible job of asking for help. And I recognize that so much now in people that are caretaking. I'm like, ask for help. Also know when you're trying to ask for help as a caretaker, sometimes you're like, I don't know what to ask for. I don't know what to tell you to help me with. And when people say, "What can I do for you?" I'm like, I have a whole website dedicated to don't ask me that question, just do.
Yep.
I don't know if I did, I took one trip once, but I don't think I did a great job finding. My little bit of time was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I'd read probably 2 hours of that, maybe, but that's probably was my only release.
Wow. You have, the physical impacts. I mean, you're not exercises. You probably weren't eating very well because let's face it, and then you have the emotional impact. It's highly stressful, even though you love your mom. It's not a, people say, as an example, people say that when you're a mother, there's so much joy being a mother, but it is really difficult mentally and emotionally. And, so when I've talked to, I'm personally not a mother, but, I've talked to friends. So it is really, it's difficult. It's not all joy and happiness. And then there's the financial impact also. So people do not realize that health insurance isn't going to be covering a lot of what you need. Can you talk about that a little bit so people could really can learn the reality of what this is in our country?
Um, so my parents, and this is bizarre. So they always wanted to be at home. They never wanted to separate. And my dad bought long-term care for himself and paid for this. But my mother never qualified because she also has MS. So she didn't have long-term care. And I was like, in hindsight, I was like, why in the heck? You're never going to leave her. So why do that? But they had no plan or savings for what would happen next. Their whole plan was, we'll sell the house and use that and come live by Tracy. That was kind of the plan. And there was no like when. Um, but mom had Social Security, and we still have the house in Nashville. So there's all the expense. There's property taxes. There's filing their taxes. Um, Driving her around, medical, medicine, you name it. I mean, your entire expenses go up. Clothes. She came with a cat. I'm not a cat person at all, but I can't leave her without her cat. So, buying cat food. And the 20, I don't know what I know how much her social was, but it didn't go very far because there was the house still to pay for, and it wasn't time to sell the house. I wasn't ready either to sell the house. So
Yep.
I supplemented everything
Mm.
that she needed. Fast forward to when I put her in the memory care, we also paid for that because there was no long-term care. So and this longer how you restructure their estate and how you plan to whatever you pay for get back. But memory care it was $7,800 a month.
Yeah.
And I picked the memory care place because of the low ratios and it was low amount of residents. They specialized in memory care and dementia. It wasn't a progression, but at that point, I was like, for the last 13 months, I mean, that's what we had to do. And it is your kids are still in college. I had one still in college. I have a 15-year-old. I still have my business, my expenses, and then all of mom's expenses. And I'm fortunate that we were able to get through this. It's got real tight. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, people do not realize, even, people have this idea that when they get older, they'll be able to hire someone, but people, and just come in and take care of them. But there will be a point where you will need someone 24 hours a day to help you, no matter what, even if you don't have dementia. And people do not understand, even if you hire a person who is non-medical,
that's right,
it's costing at least $35 an hour. It is not inexpensive. And Medicare is not paying for that. Medicare does not pay for home health aides. So
No.
it is really, people do not realize how tough, unfortunately, and which I think is awful, that we do not take care of people who are older. We're all going to get there, everyone. Guess what? We better plan, to take care of each other.
We better. I mean, when I paid for my parents their home health, it was $40 an hour just for one person. If they take care of my mom, it was an extra $7. It was $47 an hour. So let's just call it $50 an hour for two people. They needed 24/7, help. That's 168 hours in a week. So you're right. You're at $8,000 a week if you cover all the hours. And eventually, I kind of cut it back, but that's a ton of money just for home health work. And we haven't even done the food and the insurance and the doctors. And luckily, they did have supplemental insurance. But Texas, I think I paid anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour, depending on who it was I hired. The home health workers don't get a lot of that. So if you're paying an agency $30 an hour, they may get 15 to 18 to, maybe 20, maybe. I doubt it. I think they get closer to $18 out of the 30. And that's $36,000 a year for them. That's nothing to live on if you figure out how much your rent is and car, all that. So it is. And I know everybody wants to talk about how they age in place, and that's the trend because we don't have enough people working at the assisted living. I'm like, well, who's going to do that? Like, who are these people that are gonna take care of us? Like, where are they coming from? I've done the math. I'm like, there's not enough people. So I agree with you. I don't think people know, and it's changed the way I've thought of my aging plan with my husband. I mean, I redid every plan I had so that there was a plan because of mom and dad.
It's very eye-opening. Now, were there moments, I'm sure there were moments that really tested your boundaries emotionally, physically. Were there times when you were able to say no and set limits and do that even without guilt? I mean, that's the guilt is huge.
I guess sometimes people would think a dementia person's being nasty or evil because they intentionally are doing that. Now, my mom sometimes used to get nasty, so I'd have to sort through that. But I walked into her room and, Mom, it's time to get it. And she used to be able to stick her lower jaw out, look at me, and she'd look at me and she would tell people to F off a lot. Well, she told me that one day, and I was like, oh, really? I was like, okay, I was like, well, you know what? We're just not going to do this right now. I'll come back later when you pull yourself together. And I was like, where did that come from? You know, because it's like your mom, you don't want to talk nasty to her. But at that point, and I could just feel it swelling in on me. I'm like, what the hell? I've been taking care of you. But she doesn't like go through that in her head, like you've been taking care of me and doing all this. And now I should be nice to you. That's not her moment. Something was bothering her that she said that to me, but I didn't think that. I just was like, you're being ungrateful and I am now pissed and I'm going to walk out the store. And I remember just walking and um, I just talked into my phone about everything I could think of that just went on. And one of the ladies that would come occasionally to do yoga with me or with my mom reached out to me and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not right this minute." And called me and she walked me through it. But then I knew how to deal with those moments later. And if she was not in the moment, I would just let it go. I couldn't always say no to her where she would accept it, but she could accept my husband saying no. And she was like that with men. And I just didn't care at that point. I just needed to get it done. And so if I needed something to be said no, and at that moment I could tell we were not seeing eye to eye, I was like, Brian, can you go in there and, I'll ask a question. And when mom brings it up, just say, no, we're not doing that, Sue. And that's how we would do it. And it'd be over. So I had to be a little creative sometimes with how I said no. But it wasn't hurting her. It was in her best interest. So
I know that your husband sounds amazing, that he sounds like he was a great support. I'm curious, what worked as far as your support system? Because all of us have friends, all of us have, people that we work with, and we always feel that we will have the support, emotional and other, when the time comes. So people do not know how to relate to this, and it's not their fault. It is taboo in our country to talk about illness, to talk about dementia. It's almost like we feel like if we talk about it, we're gonna catch it, right?
yeah.
And
Yes.
so people ignore it, like they don't talk about it. So what, as far as support, what helped, what didn't?
I had a couple people that I would text or reach out to that knew what I was going through. And I call 'em my faith rocks. And I would never wasn't very good, and I still probably am not a very good responder. And it's usually not because I choose that. It's because when your mother needs you because she's, gonna, try to find the bathroom and you need to help her, you can't respond to people, or because she has poop all over her hands and you have to sit there and wash her hands, you can't always respond to people. But had two faith rocks that I would be like, I'm this is tough. This is, and they would always give me either a verse or just say something really grounding that would help me. Um, the home health, there was maybe three home health workers that started just, I would say, caring for me. One of the ladies that used to clean my house also worked at long-term care. And one day she said to me about 3 or 4 months into it, do you want me to help you with your mom? And I was like, oh, Maria, my God, yes. And it was a godsend because she was so good with mom, and her and mom got along so great. And then they would help like tidy the house up. And Judy was another one. She said, let me cook for you. And I finally just let it go. And it was like, maybe she didn't cook like I did, but I didn't care. And she'd leave me little notes. Judy, it was Mother's Day, or I don't know what it was, but Judy got a card for my mom to me. And she used to do this. The help and support came out of these places, that kind-hearted humans that just were in my life. I didn't feel it was my kids or husbands. And I said the word burden, and I don't say burden because the burdens are bad things. It wasn't their burden to bear with mom. And I also knew how much it frustrated my husband when because he would like debate with her still. I'm like, dude, you're like, we used to call that the black hole with my grandfather. I'm like, you just walked into the black hole. Like, good luck getting yourself out of that debate with my mom. But I didn't let them always watch her for extended periods of time. So the support group was slightly random, of people that were just beautiful gifts, I think. And I would occasionally, my husband and I would go out, and Maria would stay till she'd stay till 11 or 12 and put mom to bed for me. And
Mm.
that was a huge help because when you're waking a person up and putting them to bed and then listening all night, it's kind of like when you have, for a newborn baby and you watch them breathe. I was listening for her all night, in case she would get up. But, it's kind of an odd support system. I went 3 or 4 times to a support group. It was okay. We tended to talk more about the dementia person than the caretaker. But I didn't really, looking back, I could have been more intentional about the care. But when you're thrown into it without a plan, you're just getting up, doing one foot in front of the other and getting to the finish line every day was getting in bed. And so you just did everything you could because once you got in bed, you were hoping to have a break.
You, there's no right or wrong. I mean, you're getting through your day. I think we do a wonderful job at shoulding on ourselves, right? We should be doing this. We should. It's all intention. It's all heart, and it's all what you can do. Um, and let's face it. What we see a lot of times, our expectations or what we see are based on something we see in TV, or it's something like, oh, these expectations about how it should go are so unrealistic, that it's amazing. I mean, it is amazing what how we think things should go and be. And in so many instances, I mean, I have this discussion about death with people. It's not like what's on TV. We don't, with social media now, people don't look this way. That's called a filter. Like the unrealistic expectations that we have in all areas of our lives right now, is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Sometimes I, just folded mom into the self care too. And we would, go to the salon, I think every 6 weeks because I would take her to get her nails done with
Yeah.
me. And eventually I stopped doing that. But
Well,
we would do that. And it's, you got to get her ready, and to get out of the house. And then you get 1,000. And I was, eventually I got really good at, I knew what questions she'd ask me because you'd get in the car to go get her hair done. And she'd be like, where are we going? And she might ask you 9 or 10 times. And I just would answer to the salon and I would say it over and over. And really it really hurt, I guess, because sometimes she would say, I probably asked you that a dozen times. And I would say to her, you've only asked me 5 or 6. I'm ready for 7 more, mom. And she would laugh, but I would try to make her feel comfortable because they'd have these moments of clarity where they realized what they were doing. And she didn't do it because she was trying to piss me off, asking me, and then sometimes she would get me like, she'd be like, no. And I'm like, are you kidding me, mom? She goes, and then she'd laugh because she had that moment of clarity where she was just trying to, be funny. But I fold her into the self care. I took her to take massages and eventually got to where that was too confusing for her. But we did the nails and hair probably up to 2 or 3 months before she went to memory care. And I have these videos of us doing that, and trying to make her have some of the fun and some of the self-care with me, even though it was still caretaking, helped. And it helped to have the fun moments.
I want to talk about memory care and that decision to go to memory care and what you looked for in memory care. So if you could just like talk about that for a little, and then we'll move on to the last thing that I want to talk about.
So I told my husband that I'm going to know when it's time. And I think she had been here like September, October. I started reaching out to some places, and I didn't respond after I did the first. I was like, I'm not ready. Like, it's giving me more anxiety about doing this now. So I knew it wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. Then in January, I thought, the following year, she'd been there almost a year. I thought I was ready. And my husband and I drove out. It was about an hour outside to Kerrville, hour from where I live. And we went and played golf where a couple of the memory cares were. And I'm like, I just remember vividly breaking down on the 15th hole. And I'm like, I can't do this. I can't drive an hour each way and see her and stick her in some random Texas town. She would kill me. Like, this is the worst, like putting her out to pasture. And so I was like, none of these are good. Like, and Judy, one of the home health care workers, actually was helping me screen all these places. And my first requirement was, you walk in and it smells like urine, walk out.
Yep.
Not go. And because that's what I remember as a teenager when we visited nursing homes.
Yep.
So I finally found James Lee, and actually I found him through Joanna LaFleur, and she was one of the people I found on LinkedIn at midnight, probably 3 or 4 months into mom staying here. I was having a breakdown. She's a dementia care expert. I sent her a LinkedIn message. She responded, and we talked for a couple hours the next day, and she's been in my life ever since then. She lives in Michigan. She is a, a direct blessing from God to me, and I don't even know if I would have made this whole journey without her. And she goes, you need to meet James Lee. And so I found James Lee, who runs Bella Groves in Bulverde. And I had actually texted him that September. I thought I was ready. But I reached out to him, and I knew I was ready the night I went up, and mom had started having trouble with wiping herself after the bathroom, and it was okay for a long time. But there was so much feces on her hand. I came down just bawling to my husband. I was like, I'm ready. I can't do it. I'm like, I'm broke. So I called James, and he said, let's go have breakfast. And we met in Bulverde, and Bulverde's this cute little town in Texas. And they have a restaurant called The Hatch. And it's just, I mean, when you think of cute little Texas towns, it's a cute little Texas town. And we went in and had breakfast, and we talked for 2 hours. Cause at that point I'd started parenting our parents. I was working on a foundation for dementia caregivers, was immersing myself in the senior living space. And we just talked for 2 hours about it. And then he said, you want to go see the place? And we drove down, and I walked in, no smell, check. It had 16 different, different, studios or one bedrooms. And he walked me through. He showed me the kitchen's right in the open. They have a big, grand piano and a living area, and there were people out. And what I first noticed is James talked to each of the residents and named their names as we walked through.
Wow.
And I can't tell you I'll just make up his name. John was he in a wheelchair, and John is, I don't know how many medals of honor the man has. And he was, kind of walking around, and James stopped and talked to him. and kneeled down to get on his eye level. And I was like, that's so compassionate. Um, John also speaks Spanish. And as mom was in her last 8 days, I remember John being outside mom's room. And I was like, I said, habla español or something. I don't know what I said. His eyes, like all he wanted to do was talk Spanish. And so I just took a moment and walked John around. And at that moment, I knew this was going to be the right place for mom. Um, and James, we walked outside and sat down and does you need a hug? And I'm like, God, yes, I do. And he hugged me. And then we sat for another half hour out there. And he's like, I said, I guess I should see the rooms and stuff. I don't really care about it. I was like, I care more about you and the people and your philosophy and what this all means and what you know about dementia. And if you get her up at 8 o'clock in the morning, good luck to you. And he goes, yeah, well, we don't do that. We really go with the flow people here. And that was perfect because mom doesn't get up till 11. And you know what? After you work that long, if you don't want to get up till 11 a.m., good for you. So I moved mom into Bella Groves, and that's big love for all those folks over there. It was a huge room. She had a small dinette area, she had a living space, and then she had her bedroom and her bathroom. I mean, it was gorgeous. I
Mm.
mean, I decorated it. There are a lot of things, you can't have rugs and things like that, but I actually took some of the furniture from my house. Again, financial, I paid for all that, but I wanted it to be similar like, so I took a lot of her furniture from the bedroom, her living room, so that she would feel familiar.
Yeah.
It was a horrible week dropping her off, but we went on a family vacation, and I had told her that she was staying at a resort while I was gone. Um, the first day I came to visit her, she was like, I am so mad at you. And I'm like, you are? She goes, where is Princess? Well, hadn't decided if the cat should go or not. And Princess is her cat. And I was like, Mom, I told you I didn't get all the paperwork done for the cat, so I couldn't bring her. Yeah, that was a big fat lie because mom couldn't take care of the cat at that point, but she was so mad at me. And she's like, just, I don't want to talk to you right now. And I was like, okay. I just walked out, kissed her on her head, said, I love you. And we went on vacation. And that's the whole story of the journey was fantastic. And I was able to be with her the last 8 days of her life because of the place I chose.
Can you talk about that if you are open to sharing a bit about her final days and what did those look like and what did you need most during that time?
So I'm glad you asked because I think that it all led to a beautiful walk home for her. Um, and why I had done all this research about dying, I don't know. I think it was as my dad was dying, I was looking. There was a point when it switches from medical to spiritual in my mind, and when there is going to be no recovering, I wanted to embrace his final moments. And many years ago, someone had said, look, there'll be people that they see that will come visit that are going to help them. And and forget dad sitting on the toilet. We had our best conversation sometimes then. And he was staring off, looking, and he goes, and I'm like, Dad, is someone here? And he looked at me, goes, how do you know? And I'm like, Dad, I believe, I know they come to help you.
Yep.
And so about 4 weeks before mom died, I walked into her room, and she'd been sleeping more and more. And I kind of knew something was happening. And mom slept a lot anyways, loved to sleep. Something was different. And I walked in and and not molting skin or modeling skin, but I could just see the color of her hand had changed.
Mhm.
And she was staring, and not like a hallucination. She's had those. And I was like, Mom, is someone here? She's like, yeah, there's someone right over there. And I'm like, do you know them? And she's like, no. I'm like, are they tall? And she goes, yep. And I'm like, well, that's not your side of the family because you guys are short. And she laughed, and I cried like a baby and cuddled next to Mom because she had a queen size bed, and I all the time would just get in bed and lay next to her, and we'd sing, listen to music or talk. And I got next to her because I knew the journey had started. And I drove home, and I sat and I got a big giant glass of wine. I sat on the back porch and just cried. And my husband walked up to me. And he's like, asked me, and I told him, I'm like, it's time. She's starting. And I visit her every single day after that. And then I think I missed 2 days. And then that Sunday morning, it would have been the 13th, Bella called and said, hey, your mom fell. And I said, I'm on my way. And I got there about, I don't know, 3 o'clock. And I had called hospice the July before because I'm a believer in hospice. And it doesn't mean that they're dying immediately, but they do some great things. And
Yes.
so the July before she passed, I had called hospice and checked her in. And they visit her every week. The chaplain visited her and got to know her. The social work. I mean, it was the aides. It was a whole host of support for her. Well, that Sunday when they said she fell, hospice was already there, and we don't think she really fell because she had no. When people fall, she had no injuries. I think she just got tired and laid down. Well, when I was there, all of a sudden she started violently throwing up black, and I'm freaked out. And the hospice lady and I are there, and we cleaned her all up. And apparently she'd done that morning too before, and they'd given her a shower, and she was pissed, and because it makes her cold. And so I'm freaked out at this. And Tracy, when I say it smelled like death, it smelled like death. And I just knew things were going to start progressing. And I stayed there. Well, a couple hours later, she did it again. And then I freaked out because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want her to choke. And I'm lifting her up. And it is like a violent, I finally got the trash can. I called the EMS, the fire department, because there's one right in the parking lot. And I got so confused because if you take them to the hospital, they have to check out of hospice.
Yep.
And then they have the whole process of checking back in. And then, and the firemen aren't necessarily, and I love firemen and I have a ton in my life, but they're not necessarily trained in dementia or the signals of dying.
Yep.
And I was telling them, I was like, they're like, well, put her on the brat diet. I'm like, and I know I probably looked at him like, WTF? Like, dude, I just told you 5 seconds ago, like, we're on the journey. And I got a little angry and I walked out and I came and called hospice. And she's like, Tracy, you can make your own decision, but the journey to the hospital alone is going to be very hard for your mom. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm back on path because my plan had always been I will stay with her as she starts this journey and I'm not going to leave her. So I walked back in and I said, all right, we're not going to the hospital. I wanted them to give her some nausea medicine. That became an escalation. I said, all right, we're done. If you guys just going to help me get her back into the bed, then I got it from here. They did. They left. And then I stayed with her until Saturday night before Easter. And I can't tell you, Tracy, how many times I thought she was going to pass away. I mean, I knew the signs. We'd seen people.
Yep.
I have a whole book I'm writing called Walking Home with Grace. And it's all about the whole 8 days leading to her passing. And it was beautiful. I mean, one moment I remember looking at her and I was like, Mom, are the angels here? And she goes, they're here for you too, Tracy. And I was like, it was just,
Mm. Mm.
I look off in the side because sometimes I'm like, okay, keep blinking so I don't cry too much. I know it's a long story, Tracy. I don't mean to be, but I
Don't
hope I
worry.
encourage people that death isn't scary. It is beautiful. It is joyous. It is the most intimate with your person you'll ever be. It's 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 just beautiful. And I got to tell Mom past messages to people that have already passed. I don't know how many times I thought, okay, I'm ready, Mom. And the chaplain came on Tuesday, and I was like, Madeline, I keep telling her I'm ready. And she goes, and I said, and then Madeline, I laughed because I realized again, I'm not in charge. And she goes, yeah, we got to tell ourselves a lot. And I'm like, and then Thursday came, and then Friday, I'm like, and then I was like, oh my gosh, Madeline, I didn't realize that I had this left to say to Mom or this left to say. Or when I said, I love you, like Wednesday, and they start getting less and less responsive. But I looked at her and said, I love you, Mom. And she just blinked twice. And it was just great. I don't think I left the room. And the Belgrove staff was so beautiful. They came and brought me lunch and dinner, and their food was so damn good. And I could not believe how many people came to say goodbye to Mom that work there, all shifts. And I would say to them, would you like a moment alone? I'm just going to leave the room for a while. And I'd close the door and they could be with Mom. But I'm like, oh my God, these people love her. And this is such a wonderful moment. And this place is allowing us to experience this with each other. And if I had picked, yeah, I'm sure there were other places, but I couldn't do that in a hospital. Yes, I could have done it if she was living here, but I wouldn't have been the same. Because if I would have taken care of her any longer, I think I would have been a little nutty. Um, and finally, I was like, maybe she just doesn't want to do it in front of me. And all my kids had already planned to come in for Easter, and so I called them all to come. I said, I need you guys to all be here at noon on Saturday. And so they all got there. And in the meantime, I had called hospice, and I am not usually one that calls and said, I need something. I called and I said, I need a chaplain. And Madeline and I already had planned. She knew who was on call that weekend. And I would I think Mom, because she was raised Catholic and had become, I thought she'd converted, but she was very, very much Catholic at the end. And I think she needed some last rites or some Catholic rituals. And so kids got there, and when they got there, I played all these songs that Mom loved, and I'd already done that, by the way, throughout the week. Um, when I thought she was going to pass a couple times, but played all these songs for my kids. We were around her bedside. We prayed together, and I pray a lot. We pray a lot as like one-offs, but we prayed as a family. They all said their goodbyes. I mean, you want to talk about why we don't talk about it? It's because our own mortality, I think, is in the question, and we have to realize it. And then when our kids are watching us go through our parent dies, they know in that moment they have to go through it. And God, if I could have helped him avoid the pain, I would. So they all did that. And then mom loved music, and music was always playing. And I'm saying goodbye to her, and I'm knowing I'm going to walk out this room. And Roy Orbison's song comes on. Um, you got it. And I'm like, okay, that's really funny, Mom. I hear you telling me that I got it. And the whole song played. Talk about divine presence. And then I didn't leave yet because I'm also stubborn. And then Frank Sinatra's My Way comes on, which is the same song my father-in-law loved that we played at his service. We played at my father's service. And My Way comes on, and I'm like, okay, I got it. So I left. Had Easter morning with my family. We do baskets, and then went to my mother-in-law's because she was checking into the hospital 2 days later for her stem cell transplant journey. And they called me and they were like, your mom's heart rate's dropping. And I just walked to the front of my mother-in-law's house, and then all my kids gathered, and I'm like, okay, I'm not rushing to go because I said I'm not driving like an idiot at 30 minutes to. I was like, I'd already said goodbye. Let's finish dinner, and then I will go if she's still, with us. And she was. And so I got there about 7 o'clock that night, and hugged her and stayed up all night. And at 5:07, I always am holding her hand. She passed away, and I was there for it, but it was peaceful and lovely. And I got to experience that with my mom, and I hope everybody can do that with their parent and loved ones, because it's the closest. I'm a big faith person, so I know it's the closest to God we'll ever be. Is that those moments as they pass in the journey. And as I said, out of nowhere, she walked home with Grace, and I got to help her walk home that whole week.
Traci, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I know that you're still in it with your mother-in-law. I want to thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for the time that you took to talk with us today. Before we wrap up, can you share how people can learn more about you and your story, and tell us when your book, I know you're writing your book. Do you have a date that you think it's going to come out?
Oh gosh, I hope sooner than later, because I worked on, while you're sitting there, I captured everything with mom throughout the 8 days. But I hope by fall, I would say, October, November, it should be ready. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very hard to find. There's Tracey Scheffler, so it can find me pretty easy. I have an enormous support system and network of the senior living space in every capacity you can imagine, from memory care to dementia training to music therapy to planning. I'm always helping people, not only if they just need it from a caregiver, but I always can give you a network advice. Traci, you're a network, person. You found me pretty easily. So
Yes. I love
I
your
would say,
TikTok. Yeah, I hope you do more
yeah,
videos on TikTok, because it's such a great way to get out to people, and to get out to people who are not your typical people our age who are working with our parents, but people who are younger also should learn about this. So I
it's
appreciate that.
amazing. Yep. So you can find me that way. It's pretty easy. And I respond. It might take me a little while, but I would say those LinkedIn's pretty easy to find me and just send me a message that way. And then parentingourparents.info. There is another parentingourparents.org, and we're both in the industry of helping people, but there's a lot of good information on there. I would just say if you're struggling and you're thinking about it, no matter where you are in the journey, I would be always willing to talk or to give you a resource if you need it. So that's it.
Thank you. Well, listeners, caregiving can often feel lonely and overwhelming, but as Traci reminds us today, there is space for boundaries, grace, and unexpected connection. Remember to extend kindness and patience, not just to your loved ones, but to yourself as well. You're not alone, and it's okay to ask for support. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comfort Enclosure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.